doing it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I was surprised when I was doing just myself and I was talking, like people were tuning in, and I think I may have told you I was getting like 600 views of just my podcast and me just bullshitting and talking, because people were just like, I feel like I'm just like sitting in the room with you and just listening to you talk about crap that you're like learning about. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And then I'll put like the painting I was talking about like here and just kind of keep it simple and just let the table kind of just grow of crap. Like I got this little Mount Hood thing, and then I got your products up front.
Yeah, boy. Thank you.
Absolutely. And then Indy's perfectly framed underneath the coffee table.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
This is sick, man. I'm fired up.
Yeah. And I already started recording, so
let's go. Okay, perfect.
All right, so
terrible just yet.
Yeah, so Chase Hobby, right?
That's me.
What hobby? I've never even seen that as a last name.
Oh man, learned some interesting things over the last handful of years, but in short, I don't know. Without getting into like too much, details, my dad never knew his dad, and so. We all always kind of wondered, my brother and I always kind of wondered what that last name was from. Sure. And so we ultimately found out that it's really not from a whole lot of anything. We found this out a couple of years ago. So essentially I put the screws to my brother and my dad. I was like, hey man, like we don't, we could be whatever we want to be. We could be Vanderbilts if we wanted to be. Yeah. We could be Roosevelts. Like, why don't we, when we start new and figure it out? But by that point, my brother had already had kids and everything. And he was like, no, we're all in on hobby. So, I mean, it's a cool last name. I'm half joking about it, but, it was like a funny episode in the family history. But in short, I don't know where the name came from. But we're taking it here forward.
Yeah. I just, the first time I saw it when you followed me on Instagram, I was like, I've never seen that last name before. Yeah, man, it's kind of like I've never met another Disney. Like I've never, like there's certain last names that are like out there, and I see them, and I think I would run into someone with that last name. You just never seen it before.
Yeah, I realized at some point I have two sort of normal dictionary words: Chase, hobby.
Oh,
what I mean? And regardless, people get it wrong all the time. But
what do you mean?
Misspell it, or hey, Jason Hobie, or like they misspell it or mispronounce it or whatever. Which
I get that
bizarre,
all the time.
But, anyway, I'm happy with it. It's the only name I got, and I'm going with it.
People have they always add a T to my name, Wes, and I'm like, have you ever met a West, like a direction? Like, I don't know why. I mean, and then infamously, like anytime you go to a coffee shop. Yeah. But, besides the history of your last name, you have an extraordinary background in your military and education. And now you've started VRB Labs with your buddy, Evan.
That's right, man. I appreciate that. Yeah. And, from, originally from Clearwater, Florida, and left to go to the Naval Academy in Annapolis, which was fantastic and terrible and all of it, all the things it's supposed to be.
Before you go forward, because I want to talk about Annapolis. Like when I was growing up in a military family, my dad kind of preached, hey, you should look at these military academies. Like West Point was one that I was looking at the best. My sister and I visited the Air Force Academy, which probably has the most beautiful campus. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like and then, of course, there's Annapolis. But when I started seeing the requirements of government appointment and all that, like I was like, oh. Yeah. So I never even tried. I got into every college that I applied to. I never even tried for a military academy. How difficult was it to get in?
I mean, honestly, this is like forever ago. I remember it being a hassle for sure. There was a lot of hoops to jump through. It's the great thing about the academies, and I think the hard thing about particularly applying to the academies, is that it's not just academics that they're concerned about. You got to do the academic piece
because you got to play two sports, right?
You got to play sports. You got to do the extracurriculars. You got to do student government and stuff like that. I wouldn't say you need to, but pretty much everybody that's there, it's competitive enough to get in that folks really have to do kind of all of it. You got to play sports. You got to do the extracurricular stuff. You got to be great in the classroom, all those things. Mm-hmm. And I was very lucky to be recruited be an athlete there. So like,
oh, you got
I had
recruited.
always, yeah. So,
Okay.
so essentially like I had always, I had it on my radar from a young age because my great grandfather was a bombardier in the Army, and really sort of kind of on family trips up to that area, that part of the country where my family is from. You know, we'd pass through Annapolis, and my great grandmother and my great grandfather would be like, "Hey, look at this place."
Really romanticize it, right?
Yeah, like really. Yeah. You know, it's they made they helped me to understand, you know, that it was a pretty big deal, and they just put it in my head at a very early age. And the good news for me is when it came time for me to be kind of looking at schools, I was lucky to be recruited on the athletic side, which put it like front of the line. And essentially, you know, I had some other opportunities on that front, but you know, I told my mother, you know, in that time frame, I was like, hey, look, if I really don't like it, I'll leave and go to one of these other schools. I'll go to a state school or, you know, one of these normal schools,
Sure.
play sports and call it a day. And, you know, of course you get there, it's a military school. They shave your head. They break you down.
You get no privileges, right? At the beginning, no car, no TV, right?
Yeah.
No,
your first year, you're pretty, they got you on lockdown for sure. So
see, I remember seeing that, like, because I grew up really into computers and video games, like to a terrible extent. Like I was a very good athlete. I played college baseball, but I was D2. But I was very hooked on electronics, and I remember seeing that and being like, yeah, I don't know if I want to.
It's, I mean, honestly, like it's a great, you know, I don't want to call it a hazing package, but it is like, it breaks you down pretty good. And really, you know, if for nothing else, it puts everybody on the same playing field where we all have gone through, you know, something that's uncomfortable and not necessarily super easy and really not pleasant.
Sure.
And so it has made it so I look back on that, and, you know, I was at a wedding a couple weeks ago with all of my best buddies from the Naval Academy. And, you know, it just occurred to me when I was at that wedding, looking around at all these guys, like we've all known each other since we were 18 years old. And we have a really deep bond. And again, it's not like, you know, all of us were like, did like horrendously hard things, but we all just were like uncomfortable at a formative time in life. So when you're 18 years old and all your buddies from high school are at, you know, you name the state school, they're partying, they're in a frat, they're having a great time. And you and your buddies, and you and your buddies are locked down. You know, the only time you're allowed off the base is, you know, Saturday from like 10 a.m. to 9 p.m.
They refer to Annapolis, the academy, as the base.
They call it the yard.
The yard.
The yard.
That doesn't make it sound better.
Yeah, I know, right? So you're pretty much locked in, and you know, no civilian clothes, no drinking, no fun of any kind shall be had. But
man, you almost need that though, because I remember, you know, you're 18 in high school and you feel like big, you know, the big dog on campus, and then you go to college and you're a child. Like I even look at people fresh out of college and I'm like, you're such an infant, like
totally
no experience, and you still need like oversight. Like,
yeah.
So
I mean,
it
honestly,
makes
like,
sense.
It was a fantastic, like when I was in high school and I was looking at it, no kidding. I remember my mom at some point was like, what is wrong? Why would you want to do this? Like, this sounds objectively horrendous. Like all your friends are going to go have a fun, formative time in life. And it's like, it's going to be a heap of fun. You are choosing to have a tough time. Why are you doing that? And I was like, you know, hey man, you're going to have to put the work in one way or the other. I would like to start putting the work in now, such that,
man,
you know,
that's such a mature 18-year-old.
I mean, honestly, I was plenty immature, but for whatever reason, that was like, I'm very lucky that was my thought process. Like delayed gratification. Let's start putting the work in now. And yeah, I mean, I'm very glad I did it. My 4 years there were rough. I did not, aside from making incredible friends and lifelong friendships, I had a tough time. Like academically, I had a tough time. You know, just like you said, I went from being, you know, one of the top whatever people in high school. I was like pretty good at sports. I was pretty good in the classroom. I you know, and it was all pretty straightforward, to, man, people are like really good at sports here, and man, pretty people are
I mean, you're
smart.
D1.
Yeah, people are super smart here. Yeah. And so I was like, man, this is like really tough. And so
well, not
I was
only
very
that
happy
too,
to like learn all that early to learn that it takes hard work and to be uncomfortable and to push hard and to do all those things.
but you never see like when people don't realize. You look at U.S. News World Rankings on universities and stuff. You don't see the academies on there, and like, right?
They're always like in like a special section. They're always like in the federally subsidized, liberal arts, whatever.
But
schools,
the academics there are like extremely challenging. Like,
yeah, and I can say subjectively for myself, yep, sure. And it also doesn't help that I was a history major at the academy.
Really?
But everybody there has it's a
doesn't everybody study
STEM,
history there?
It's a STEM curriculum, so it is like I have a BS. I have a Bachelor of Science in history, which is like not a thing. I don't know what schools have that, but it's like Navy, Army, and maybe Air Force. And so the bottom line is, even as a history major, it was you have to take all the math, thermodynamics, a couple semesters of electrical engineering, physics, chemistry, all these classes that are like systems engineering, all these classes that are particularly if you are not naturally inclined to think that way or take those type of classes, it's tough. So for somebody like me, it was particularly, I think, I'm guessing I would have done better if I would have gone to, you name the school where I could have been a history major and essentially focused on the things I was good at. But
and then what do you do with it?
Exactly. And then the point is that like the great news is I learned sort of the hard way how to study, how to make sure that I budgeted my time, how to look at a goal off in the distance and say, okay, how am I going to back plan my way into making sure that this thermodynamics class over the semester goes well.
Aren't you glad you took those classes though?
Totally.
They're fun.
Totally.
I think people don't realize how fun that is. And I still listen and read physics for fun.
Well, that makes you a very special person.
I just think it's super interesting as far as like our whole lives. And I took, I was mechanical engineering first before I switched to biochemistry. So I had this whole array of engineering courses, and I still like, I'll be sitting in a chair and still think about the applied forces against it, me sitting in it against the floor, pushing in. And it's just, I'm just a nerd that way. And I absolutely eat that stuff up. And I'm happy that my electives in undergrad were the physics and the engineering courses that I accidentally took because I switched majors.
Totally. I mean, honestly, it is incredibly interesting. And
what are you going to do with it?
It was hard to do. It was
gender study. Not to knock any of that stuff down, but we're talking about stuff that can be applied later in life. And that's the big problem with universities is that they force you guys to take it at the military academies. So yes, okay, you want to be a history major. I know people that were history majors at the public universities. They did what you said. They only focused on history. None of them use a history degree.
Honestly, a broad education, I think is, in my view, is an important thing. I mean, the whatever it is that you're doing should be a relatively broad thing.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, the way I view it, and I'm no expert here, but the way I view it is college is a time to, in our sort of setup in our society, college is a time to really sort of dig in, learn some broad information, broad skill sets, et cetera, that you can apply for the rest of your life. So I'm not a believer in sort of like anchoring down and, at least for most folks, in anchoring down and learning, the Windows skill set. Learning Excel.
Really? Doesn't the whole military?
Learning Windows.
But
Word.
the military runs on that.
It does, but it's a good stuff to know. But it's, I think, a liberal education across STEM, across social sciences, et cetera, is a great thing for an educated electorate. People should know a little bit about a lot of different things. And then obviously if you want to, anchor down in your career and really dig in on the finance side or the applied engineering side or whatever it is, then really dig in there and maybe get a master's, maybe do a PhD or just learn as you go. But what we don't want, and this is just me on a soapbox, we don't want a bunch of folks that see life through a soda straw of here's my experience of like, I'm a physics guy, I'm a physics person, and now I'm looking at the rest of the world through only that lens. Like, yes, be a physics person, but also know a little bit about history, also know a little bit about how the world works, and read some of the classics, do some of that stuff.
And that is super important that I had to learn on my own through listening to people. Like I listened to a podcast with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was talking about the importance of doing art to activate different parts of your brain, which allows you to think differently. Like, I'm a very logical thinker, but when you expand and fiction, like we were just downstairs in my house, we looked at the book Dune. There are things, there's a lot of clinical studies that prove that reading fiction activates your brain in a much different way than reading nonfiction, which allows this expanse of synapses that work differently when you go back to doing more logical things. So I 100% agree. And just before, we get in the woods, because I want this podcast, like this is the new format of the podcast, going to be interviewing people who are in the fitness world, who I think are just generally interesting, and we'll get into more like fitness focused stuff. So Chase is co-founder, right?
That's right.
Of VRB Labs, which is a veteran owned CBD company, which is kind of funny, and I've told you before, because the U.S. military is not allowed to take CBD, unfortunately, for a lot of people, because there's so many benefits that are being proven. So we'll get into that later on. I just want to, before we go too far in, exactly who you are. So going back to the way Annapolis functions, you got this amazing broad force study upon you, but how about, I run this fitness focused channel. How about the fitness? The military academies, you got to play 2 sports, correct?
You have to play a sport. You've got to play. So there's like the varsity track, there's the club track, and then there's intramurals. So everybody at the very least has to do intramurals, which are, somewhat more intense than I think the run of the mill intramural sport world. And so that can be anything from like, hey, everybody at the academy boxes. You've got a box.
That's awesome.
For your first, I think 2 semesters, maybe. Everybody's got to take boxing. And then some folks,
you spar?
Yeah.
Really?
That's actually the test, the midterm and the test is sparring.
Well, that's, people get knocked out?
Yeah. It's a whole thing, man.
Really?
Yeah. It's you could see when it's like sparring season, people are walking around the academy with pretty banged up.
I mean,
black eyes, all of it.
I guess for people going in the military, you like, I've taken a punch. I've sparred in Muay Thai, not traditional boxing, Western boxing, and it's different,
Yeah.
What's that? Mike Tyson's got that plan. Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
It honestly, like, I'm not sure how long that'll stick around. Like now that we're learning all about CTE
concussions
and all that stuff.
Yeah,
it is like a kind of a cool old tradition. But, regardless of whatever it is, even if it was like, if they replace that tradition with something like jujitsu or something
that's what I was about to ask.
Less impact, something like that. Either way, teaching folks to really do something like, if you're not a fighter, if you don't come from that background, man, it's a scary thing to walk in and know that you're about to get smoked right in the mouth by somebody that really actually probably wants to hurt you, because at the end of the day, it's you or them. I think it's a sort of a rite of passage, and teaches you a lot about yourself in a very quick, very, very short order. You learn a lot about yourself, and you sort of learn and grow very quickly. So as a plebe at the academy, as a freshman, everybody does that. And, there's no getting out of it, regardless of who you are, whether you're,
Did people want to get out of it?
I'm certain of it. I'm certain people, like, at the end of the day, you walk into the room and you see these people are like, oh geez, like, who's going to be the guy that I'm fighting, or the girl, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And so I'm certain that people want to get out of it, but it's a great thing to do. Everybody does it.
Oh, that's right.
And then folks continue on. Some folks continue on in intramural boxing. There's a huge tradition at the Naval Academy of winning the brigade boxing championship. So that's like a track that some folks go down on the sports piece, and then a lot of folks play varsity sports or club, which is just sort of like maybe the one level down from that.
And rugby was yours?
Yeah, so I played football first year, and then rugby second year.
Oh, so you got recruited there to play football.
Yeah.
You chose that you wanted to do rugby instead?
Yeah. So essentially I got recruited to play football and to play soccer. Went to the academy, ended up just playing football. And then at the end of my sophomore year, coming into my junior year, for a confluence of reasons, I chose to go play rugby, which was kind of honestly was fantastic. It was like a combination of the soccer piece, the football piece, and it was a sport that I was always really interested in. And
did you know the rules before?
No, not at all. I watched it, but I knew that it I could, after watching it, not knowing any of the rules, just kind of watching, I could see that the skill sets were, I can kick stuff pretty good being a soccer player.
Yeah.
And the physicality and all those things, I really enjoyed all of those aspects. And so went out and, no kidding, practiced a handful of times, and, I was decent enough. I was never the best, but decent enough. And the first time I got on the field, in like a JV game, or, the second side, I looked at the coach. He's like, "Hey, Jace, let's go." And I only had like a handful of practices under my belt.
Oh no.
And he just goes, I was like, "Hey coach, I don't really know what I'm doing, man. I know some of the rules, but not all of them."
Nope.
And he just looked at me and he's like, "Well, no kidding." I think he said something to the effect of like, "Look, got it. That's how it works. But I don't care if you make a mistake, just make it violently and you're fine." And I was like, "Okay, copy that. Here we go."
That's so funny, because that's exactly what I was told too. And there's no way to learn rugby without playing the game.
Yeah.
No matter what you do in practice, do all the drills, they grab you and you go, "It's your time to shine." And
let's go.
And I don't know what you did. I jogged, well, the play doesn't stop. You got to keep going. But I mean, it still blows my, I don't sit down and watch. I think sevens are fun to watch, just, faster paced game, but I don't sit down and watch rugby matches personally. I know people who do. I still watch football more, but you think it would be a huge sport just because of the physicality and just the skill set, and it's fun to play.
I watch it all the time, man.
You do?
I really enjoy watching it. And, gosh,
I watched the All Blacks, Jesus
sure.
Christ.
I've played off and on since college. Mostly on, and I've really, again, never the best, but good enough to get out there and play and have a good time. And, it's just a super fun sport. And to your point, I think that if given the opportunity, I think Americans would love this sport. It's it's fast paced. There's no stoppages. There's no downs like football. It is very physical. But you are going to see huge hits, all that good stuff.
I'm very fortunate that I have this incredible interest in a lot of physical things. Jiu-jitsu being one, rugby being another, where my theory, the big problem with both of those sports is, especially in the UFC, when the ground game starts and people are just "Oh, stand them up.
Right.
We want to see fighting," is because people don't understand it. And there's no way you're going to understand it unless you actually do it. Because rugby, you watch it and you're like, what the hell is going on? These people are lifting people in the air. They can only lateral backwards. You can kick it forward. You start what's going on? It doesn't stop. You just see these scrums. So I kind of get it from that aspect, but it's safer than the NFL. You're not wearing those pads, and people aren't using their heads to make hits and stuff. So
for sure, I've actually never confirmed that on my own. I've heard over and over and over again that the incidence rate of, say, CTE, TBI is much lower in rugby because the guys actually tackle the way you're supposed to. They form tackle, put the head on one side.
Because if you don't, you will feel it.
You're going to get jacked up. It's going to be a bad time. But that is my impression as well. And I do agree with you that at the end of the day, if people don't understand what they're looking at, it's, you kind of watch, it looks like kill the carrier. You don't really know what's happening, and it's just a bizarre thing to watch. But I think it'll just take time. I think folks, rugby is on the ascendancy right now in this country amongst the youth programs in the same way that lacrosse sort of is. But I think that
it's another brutal
lacrosse,
sport.
Yeah. And where lacrosse is, I think, maybe more regional, really anchored regionally. I think I personally think rugby has more opportunity to grow as particularly as youth participation in normal football, American football, starts to wane as people kind of are a little worried about putting their kids into, giving their kids TBI right out of the gate.
But there are other injuries, like people get stepped on a lot.
I mean, it's like I think you get hurt more, not injured more, if that makes sense.
That's true.
There's a difference between, hey, man, are you hurt or are you injured?
Well, we had played a game in St. Louis in like -17 degrees or whatever, and I got stepped on my foot, and I mean, the ground was concrete, and I had so much adrenaline, and I was so numb from the cold, I didn't feel it. But 4 o'clock that morning, I was screaming, and my roommate at the time had to take me to the emergency room, and I ripped the tendons off my toes, just because I had like this big forward, just like, I got the ball, we're pushing, and he just steps on my foot, and it just kind of like it bends the wrong way, and it just popped like guitar strings apparently on my foot, and good. That was the last time I played. Well, I take that back. When I moved to Miami years later, I was like, I kind of miss playing rugby. But I mean, honestly, they were pretty soft. Like when I went and played, and I was like, this isn't the same game I was playing in the cold in the Midwest. Yeah, so I kind of just gave up on it. But I enjoyed it. I loved it. Yeah,
it's a fantastic sport, dude. I'm psyched that I was able to pick it up. The Naval Academy is an incredible rugby program, and it's like
was it club?
Very storied. Yeah. So we were like, I don't even remember what the designation was. It was like,
I think they're all club
plus or varsity. It was like some sort of like, we were basically on track to become a varsity program at that point. There's a handful of varsity teams in the U.S. Like Cal is probably the biggest one, University of California. But we were sort of like on track, basically. It's like a money thing to make sure the team has enough money that can support itself and yada, yada, yada. But we were like, our rugby team was, no kidding, probably one of the more successful teams on the yard. We were constantly going to at least the final 8, if not the final 4.
See, that makes sense for a military academy.
Really legit. Yeah.
Because football, you got to run the triple option because your linemen aren't as big as the linemen on their side because you guys have weight requirements.
Totally. And at the end of the day, I mean, even on the rugby side, we would go to the final 4, and we'd be like, gosh, when I was a senior at the academy, we went to the final 4 in California, in Palo Alto. And it was us, Utah, BYU, and Cal, I think. And we all went to basically some sort of like opening ceremony kind of a deal, and we're all in our uniform. In each of these schools, they're all wearing, like, Cal always wore these like varsity jackets or varsity sweaters, and everybody else is in kind of suits. And we were standing right next to the BYU team, and these guys were huge. Like, really? They were big guys. And we had some bigger guys on the team, but like not huge.
All those Mormons?
We did have,
right?
Well, honestly, I actually was wondering. I was like, man, some of these guys are like 26. Like they have been on their whatever, they go do some kind of I don't know what it is, but they go on some trip to some far flung place, and then they come back, finish their time at BYU or whatever. And bottom line is, these guys were like several years older than us, and multiple feet and tens of pounds heavier than our heaviest guy. And we were just like, the good news for us is we were in really good shape. We were very good shape, and we were technically very good. So it was like a painful experience for the first 20 minutes of the game until we started to wear teams down. And again, by being very fit and just technically very sound, like very quick to the rucks and moving the ball well, we were able to compete at a high level. So the point is that, at least for me, it was an incredible experience to be able to learn rugby quickly, play at a very high level, and be able to enjoy this sport that I'd always been very curious about. So, again, just super lucky to have been able to do it. Yeah.
So besides playing the sport, military has physical fitness requirements, right? So you were doing PT. Was that every morning? Or
it really just depends. In a lot of cases, the varsity athletes were sort of on the varsity athlete program, so that's where you would do your PT. Otherwise, students, midshipmen, they're called, do different types of PT. But the bottom line is, you have to pass.
Those football uniforms are always the best. Like the midshipmen, you get the golden anchor on there. It looks so nice.
We like it.
Yeah,
it's good. But we. Twice a year, I think it's twice a year, basically once a semester, I think, you have to go do the PRT, the physical readiness
standard
test.
One. So like the mile and a half,
push-ups, sit-ups, was ours at the academy, and it was I think it was like, to max it out, it was like 100 push-ups in 2 minutes, 100 sit-ups 2 minutes, and then the mile and a half was, gosh, I don't even, like, a failing mile and a half was 10:30.
Yeah, it's pretty slow, right?
Yeah, so it's not terrible. It's like you just, you got to put some work in to get there, especially if you're like a bigger guy. If like you're if you're not a runner, you got to put some time in to make sure that you're able to pass that.
Yeah, but that not a runner thing's kind of funny because you're not a runner if you're not running.
Yeah,
because
100%.
When I've trained for a marathon in the past or whatever, probably if you're talking like a mile and a half, probably do it 9 minutes, and if you're not running, 10:30 sounds pretty intimidating.
Yeah, and I think, honestly, it is what it is. You got to pass it. That's the deal. A lot of folks are trying to do well. How you do on that test writ large has a lot of implications for down the line, where you're able to service select, what you're going to do in the Navy, what your overall, basically, I don't even remember what it's called, man. This is forever ago, but it all like rolls into your basically where you rank. So it matters how well you do. And so,
what if they did that for like the general population, like every year, or twice a year, if you want to vote, you're going to pass this physical fitness test. You're going to do the 100 push-ups and the 200 sit-ups and everything else. And just because before, we started this podcast, we were talking about cardiovascular disease and the general population, we have freedoms in this country, but at the same time, it's like,
yeah, honestly, it opens up a whole discussion about, I don't know if you're familiar with Sebastian Junger, author. He has this really interesting concept. I'm sure it's all over the place, but his concept of freedom is sort of the dichotomy of freedom and responsibility or duty. Yeah. And so, I don't know, man, like I think it's a great thing in this country that we have voluntary service. I think it's a great thing that we don't have a Spartan society. Not everybody needs to be on the wall, like, doing the military thing. So I'm very glad that some folks get to live a easy life where running the 3 mile time does not matter, unless they want it to matter to them. But with that said, there is something very interesting about, and very, important and important, I guess, about having a free society where people can be who they want to be, do what they want to do, but also who understand that sometimes there's a duty required. I have to go do something for the good of the group, or I must hold up my end of the bargain so that I can maintain my freedom. I can maintain those freedoms for my family, for posterity, my kids, my children's, et cetera, et cetera. So like, I don't know where I come down on that. It's like, it's a
a back and forth
100%, but it is a very interesting concept.
Yeah. So you had all these principles instilled in you while at the academy as a young man. You got 4 years there. You get to move forward with your life. So you've got, physical fitness and all this stuff. And then you graduate from the academy and you go where?
I went to flight school. So I was super, super lucky to get a
flight
spot.
School sucks, right?
Did
you don't do,
it was pretty fun actually. Like it was like it was somewhat hard work to learn this stuff. Like it,
did you have to do basic or OTS to go into Annapolis?
No, essentially you have, our plebe summer is like the summer that you get there. You have X number of months as basically in boot camp. So our boot camp is called plebe summer. And then you've got 4 years so then you've got like a year of being a plebe, which is just sort of like an extension of that. And then 3 more years at the academy. And then once you're out, there's essentially 3 ways of becoming a military officer, as far as I know. I'm sure there's more, but there's going to an academy, Annapolis, West Point, USAFA, Coast Guard. And then there's ROTC, where you just go to, University of Texas, and you participate in the ROTC program. And at the tail end of it, congratulations, you've commissioned as a O1 in the military. And then there's OCS, which is, assuming you've gone to college now, you've been, say, working whatever job it is you're working for the last handful of years. You're 25 years old, and you all of a sudden say, you know what, I want to be an officer in the Marine Corps. You can pick up apply, go to OCS, Officers Candidate School, and then go from there. There's a couple other sort of random ways to do it.
There's one more that I was going to do for as a reservist officer. I never got selected for the billet, which is so funny because constantly was getting hit up by recruiters. Hey, we'd like you to join. They wanted to put me in these different jobs like supply chain officer. Nothing against them. It just wasn't in my eyes what I wanted to do. Want to serve the country, but I want the country to serve me back as well in a sort of role because I was going to take a pay cut based on what I do for a living.
Right.
And it was a direct commission position.
Right.
Go right in. My 2 weeks was going to be my on-the-job officer training school. And I was just going to be an O1. That was it.
Yeah. So there's there's a bunch of different ways to skin.
But you can point those guys out, which is a problem. Like that, growing up, I was in a program when I was little called Civil Air Patrol, Auxiliary of the Air Force, and you wear the uniform, you go do encampments and all that stuff. So I learned to march, learned to wear the uniform and stuff because my dad was always saying he could point out the weekend warriors on base because the grooming standards were down, the uniform wasn't as sharp, the boots weren't shined. So I kind of didn't like that idea as well, but it was the only thing that fit my lifestyle was that if I'm going to serve the country, it was going to be in this direct commission position.
For sure. And honestly, man, there's especially when you're younger, I feel like a lot of folks get real wrapped around the axle with who's who on the totem pole, where are you, where am I, et cetera, et cetera. And honestly, everybody everybody that's in the military has volunteered to do it. Everybody's role is incredibly important, whether or not you are the guy kicking the doors down or you are the person, you're a culinary expert on the aircraft carrier. At the end of the day, everybody is important. Everybody is necessary to get the mission done. And I think that's everybody that decides to go do that,
But there's the bonding like you talked about with your buddies from Annapolis. Like there's a shared, you went to where'd you go to basic or people share that and who'd you have as an instructor and
there's certainly shared experience.
Sure.
There's certainly shared experience and I mean there's a certain amount of that it's just human nature where you're puff out your chest a little bit and you're like, oh, I did this, what'd you do? Yada yada
just
yada.
Basic ego stuff.
Yeah, and so that's just the way it goes. But I mean, I was very lucky to get a spot in flight school. I was a Naval Flight Officer by trade, which if you've seen Top Gun, essentially I was Goose, doing all the weapon systems.
Living Goose.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
You excited for the new movie?
Dude, 100%.
Yeah.
It's honestly,
I forgot what
fired up about it.
I forgot what they said. How much? Because right now, two things that are down is military enlistment and high school sports because kids are just sedentary. They don't want to go that route, or they're just playing on the computer, and that's kind of the environment that kids are growing up in. But when Top Gun had come out in the 80s, I forgot, it was some crazy statistic of that enlistment went up just more, 10s or 20% or something.
Interesting.
Ridiculous.
I mean, it really doesn't surprise me. I mean,
minus the really cool volleyball scene, the whole movie is
yeah. I mean, it's a pretty good recruiting video if you can get somebody to oh man, I'm motorcycles.
I think the Defense Department did invest in it. I think they were a funder, but don't quote me on that. But I'm pretty sure they did.
That wouldn't surprise me. I mean, I know they played ball with the studio to get these guys out on the aircraft carrier and to do some things like that. To hey, are you going to paint us in a pretty good light? Okay, cool. Then we'll give you guys some access. And my understanding is they did that again for this next one.
It looks awesome. I can't.
It's going to be pretty cool. And
And what did you fly?
So I was initially right out of flight school. I was a EA6, which is a EA6B, which is it's called the Prowler. It's essentially like a Vietnam era attack jet off the carrier. That jet was sort of at the end of its service life. And so a couple of years into my time in the fleet, I transitioned, my whole squadron transitioned to the E-18G, which is basically the G variant of the F-18. So if you look at the Blue Angels or those kind of jets, the jets that are going to be in this next Top Gun, those are the E and F variants of the F-18. The EA-18G is essentially a variant of that with some modifications, some different sort of piping, if that makes sense. And our mission is, generally speaking, we call it suppression of enemy air defense. So that's everything from radar jamming to, we have what's called harm missiles. We've got a couple of air-to-air missiles, and essentially it's just suppressing enemy air defense. So as we, press into a target, say from the aircraft carrier, that we can, get in, get out, come home safely. Everybody wins.
Cool.
Well, we win, I should say.
UFOs?
No comment.
Have you listened to Commander Fravier's account?
Yeah, I have.
What'd you think about it?
Really interesting. The guy's
he's a credible guy, right?
Yeah, super credible.
But the one thing that I think a layperson's not going to understand is the breakdown of why he was looking at his equipment, which wasn't matching with what he was seeing visually. Right. So I haven't heard a secondhand person break that down.
I looked at all the unclassified, HUD footage and all that kind of stuff, the FLIR, all that good stuff, and it's definitely wild. It's a crazy story, and the fact that there's no on the FLIR, there's no signature, heat signature, and all that stuff. It's pretty damn interesting. So
in multiple accounts too,
right?
He wasn't the only person.
I don't know, man. This is one of those things where I just don't have enough information to know one way or the other, but I see it and I'm like, okay, well, I could definitely see how a person can, walk away with some beliefs after having seen that. And so I don't know those guys personally, but I know folks who do. And, my friends have vouched for them. Like, hey, these are good guys. They're not, they're not, weirdos or anything. You would think that, on the UFO side, it's like, oh geez, somebody saw a UFO. Like, great, what's the deal here? But these are normal guys, good, normal fleet aviator types, and they saw what they saw.
He hasn't been out there saying, hey, there's UFOs and stuff.
Right.
He's just been like, here's the account. This is weird shit.
Right.
And then breaking that down.
It's definitely super compelling, man.
Yeah.
I don't know what to think about that at this point.
So as, I guess, would fighter pilot be the proper term?
For me?
Yeah.
No. So I'm NFO, Naval Flight Officer is the
And why not?
preferred.
Why wouldn't you use that term?
It means different things, man. So
because of
naval. So depending on what you do, there's a naval aviator that would be sort of like a pilot. A naval flight officer is like what I did, managing weapon systems, etc. And then different folks just have different names. So not everybody. I think
that's right, because you were the goose,
yep,
right? Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, we'd either say, depending on what platform you're in, you'd either say NFO or WISO, Weapon Systems Officer, or Electronic Warfare Officer, or back in the day, like in the old Top Gun, in the F-14, they used to call them RIOs, Radar Intercept Officers. And so, yeah, it's a touchy subject, but NFO is the safe way to go about it.
Whatever, still badass, whatever.
I appreciate it.
And how's that physical fitness? I would assume as a pilot, focus is a big thing. You're sitting for long periods of time, right? And you're looking at instrument panels. So, you can't be out of shape for something like that.
Honestly, it's it's different. So what really matters, I think, as far as I can tell in that universe, is particularly in a tactical jet off the aircraft carrier, there's demands on your body, particularly as it pertains to G forces.
Yeah.
So your ability to deal with G's. And so that comes down to, yes, sort of general physical fitness, but also, and this is kind of interesting, the higher your blood pressure, the better you will be at handling G's. So really, you don't really want I shouldn't say you don't want, but the guys who do best, or the people who do best, aren't the distance runner, people with the super low heart rate, what generally you would think as what you would see as super healthy. Because generally what you want is somewhat high blood pressure, that keeps the pressure of the blood in your body high, so that you keep blood in your brain as the G forces get pulled on. So you're flying, 500 knots, whatever it is, and all of a sudden stuff the stick into your gut, and now you're in this, big turn, right? So you are now applying a ton of G's to the jet and to your body. And so really what that means is you're just increasing the force of gravity on your body. And that goes for your head, for your arms, for the blood inside of your body, et cetera. So as you pull those G's, the blood has a tendency to pull from your, or to depart your head and go down.
So
to your
people
feet.
black out.
Right, exactly. So you start to gray out initially, and then gray out meaning like you lose vision. So slowly it kind of like tunnels. So you have a less and less vision until it's nothing, and then you may black out. So pass out. It's called a G lock. G, loss of consciousness, is what they call it. So at the end of the day, what you want is, or what you do in that scenario is when you feel the G coming on, or when it's about to come on, you kind of like squeeze. There's a whole, litany of things that you do, but bottom line is what you do is like squeeze your legs, your abs, your butt, and then sort of like hold your breath, for lack of better purpose, or for lack of better sort of explanation. And really what you're doing is pushing the blood back up into your head. And so it turns out that the people who do best at that are, burger folks eating a burger, drinking a Coke, doing that kind of stuff. So it's like kind of a weird, and like most folks are in that world are fit, just not in the way that you might think.
Well, those guys, like, I love The Right Stuff. I think they made like a mini series about it again, but I can't, like, if you go back to the old movie, especially.
It's a great movie.
But the real guys, they all lived, minus Gus Grissom.
Right.
They all lived forever. They were just like super healthy people.
Right. I mean, I think they're like, at the end of the day, if you're and this is just me talking now, but if you're the type of person that is going to sort of jump through all the hoops required to become, like, not only to become a military officer then, but to get through flight school, to get through, like, it's a lot of studying. It's like a relatively academic field to choose, I think, in the military. And so, like, I think it just self-selects, generally speaking, a type of person that is interested in being healthy and smart and fit and all that stuff. But I mean, that said, obviously there are many, many exceptions to that rule. So again, but I don't know that I can speak, like, put a broad, explanation on that, but
yeah, flying just always blows my mind. I remember, I did a half marathon. It was the U.S. Air Force half marathon. My sister was active duty at the time, and it was in beautiful Dayton, Ohio. But I finished my half marathon, and I was waiting around for my sister and her friend to finish their marathon. And I was talking to who was a fighter pilot, and he damn near like convinced me, like, I'm like, you're going to flight school. Like, he was talking about my background, like, because all the math and stuff I did. And he was like, oh, you'd be great. You're in great shape for it. But I just could never wrap my mind around flying. Like, it's still, I've got friends who work for commercial airlines, and it's just like, you get in it and you just fly. Like,
it's a trip, man.
Yeah.
It's a trip.
And then Civil Air Patrol, one of the things you could do was you took free flight lessons in little Cessnas.
Cool.
And that's still, like, the guy would come out, look like he hasn't slept, like a little rugged, pull keys out like it's a car.
That's hilarious. Turn
that thing on, and then we're just off. And it just, it just always just fascinates me.
Yeah.
If I meet someone that flies.
Honestly, like, it was a heap of fun. And it's like, the process of learning was incredibly interesting. And the great thing about, military aviation is, like, flying the jet, or, doing all the things that you need to do to basically fly, launch, go, land safely. That's starting. That's like the starting position. And so there's a whole other world after that, whether, just like you said, like, whether now we're talking about doing all that at the carrier, then there's a whole, litany of air to ground, techniques, tactics, procedures that you need to figure out to make sure you can do the job safely. There's air to air stuff, that you need to learn if that's going to be in your, your job description. And it's just like there's no point where you are done learning, period.
That's the best.
Yeah. And so you're no kidding. Even the guys who have been doing it for 15, 20 years, they're still not as qualified as they could be. Like, they're still, like, looking for the next qualification. They've got, hey, am I level 4? Am I going to be an air wing lead? Am I, there's always something on the horizon, and there's always something to learn. That was like one incredible, I was very lucky to get that takeaway from just naval aviation generally, is like, man, like, regardless of who you are and how good you are, like, you're going to screw up constantly. And the folks who do best are those that learn from those mistakes. And that's not that's not something that you just learn by osmosis. That is a deliberate thing where you say, okay, we're going to try really hard and like work hard to make sure that this flight is planned well and everything is set so that we can execute well. Got it. So now we've briefed the flight. In the flight itself, everything is sort of like you have almost thought about everything you could think of to include all the contingencies, et cetera. And always something comes up. So you've got to like have the training and then the mindset to be able to flex with speed and alacrity. And then at the end of all that, now you're going to debrief the event. And that's where like things actually kind of get tough, because you're just like, okay, I worked really hard. This is what went well. This is what didn't. And I'm going to call myself out for the things that I screwed up. And for sure, somebody has, you're never going to be the guy that catches everything that went wrong. So then, hey, Wes, it's your turn. Okay, now you debrief. Now you debrief. And we're all kind of like learning. And it's like one of those things where you have to kind of put your ego on the shelf and put your sort of like, if you're a defensive person, if you're a human being generally, you're going to feel, I think, defensive about folks kind of coming at you, even though you're like, well, you've got like excuses and yada, yada, yada. But the folks who do best are those who pull out a pen and a paper and write it down, look at the folks that are giving them a debrief right in the eye. It's a copy that. I got it. I got that for action. I'll fix it. And then actually go do that. And so, that was something that did not really honestly come naturally to me.
It doesn't come natural to anyone.
Right. And so I learned, I think, over time, just like, hey, this is our culture. This is what we do. Like in flight school, one of my instructors told me, I think I probably had a particularly bad flight or something. And he's just like, all right, man, put your alligator skin on, because, here it comes. And I was like, all right, here we go. And, it was just like an hour, 2 hours of just getting hammered by this guy. And I was fortunate to like pick it up, learn, come back, and do a better job next time, and demonstrate that, hey man, I'm listening when you give me a debrief, and I'm putting that to action, and now I'm better. So, that's a skill set and a frame of mind, I think, that I probably wouldn't have developed on my own were it not for my time, in the cockpit doing the Navy thing. So again, very lucky. That is not the reason I did that, or the reason I chose to do that coming out of the academy or anything, but I'm very lucky that I did, because I learned all these other things that I would not have picked up otherwise.
And that's a transferable skill set to the civilian world.
For sure.
Like, I think when I look at the military, there's a lot of things that they don't do right, because they are I think people sometimes call them the world's largest corporation, is what they are. They're just a massive business when you consider all the branches together. And there's a certain chain of command and hierarchy that sometimes mucks things up and really holds back innovation in terms of processes or the way you can do business. But then there are certain things like you just spoke about, or like I have the book over here, Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin, that they learned and is adaptable just like that.
Right.
Like, that kind of stuff is incredible.
100%.
So you're flying, and then how long between end of service to a little school in Pennsylvania called Wharton?
Yeah, man. I was
and is Wharton better than Harvard?
Yes. No, I don't know. I mean, honestly, it's great. It's fantastic. I got really good buddies who went to all over the place.
I know they go back and forth in the rankings.
Yeah, HBS, Harvard Business School, Stanford, UT Austin has an incredible MBA program.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. And so, like, honestly, it's a fool's errand to try to split those hairs. But
no, it's
Wharton was right for me. I was super glad to go. Honestly, if anybody listening to this is interested in talking about Wharton, or is interested in an MBA program, I would love to. And honestly, the military generally, or the Naval Academy, I'd love to talk about it, because these are like absolute inflection points in my life, and Wharton was no different. And so anyway, yeah, I got out, and then I essentially had a year gap in between getting out of the Navy and starting at Wharton. And so
planned?
No, actually. So like putting my cards on the table, actually, I dropped my package to get out of the Navy. I applied to business school. And then when it came time for me I was actually still in the Navy, and I got all my letters back, and the schools that I was really most excited about, I either didn't get into or I got waitlisted. And so
what schools were those?
Gosh, it was like Stanford, Wharton, Duke.
So you went top tier.
Yeah, and honestly, like this was like a education in sort of doing it the wrong way. I essentially looked at the rankings and was like, all right, like what are the rankings? What are the best schools? And then where would I like to spend 2 years of my life? Okay, Palo Alto's great. Boston's really cool.
But you were still applying to the top schools. Like when I was looking, my initial plan was to look at business programs versus law school, which I eventually did. But I told myself I'm only going to business school if I'm going to like a top 10.
Interesting. So, and I don't think that's what I did, and I don't think that's the right way to do it. And I learned that the hard way. Essentially, what I did. So what I did, because so many of these schools are great and they'll get you where you're going. Mm-hmm. I think I probably had I think there's a part of me that just really had like an ego thing going on that I wanted to go to like a fancy school with like, some kind of Ivy League, yada, yada, yada.
I see you. I mean, did Evan go?
Yeah.
Yeah. You guys were wearing Wharton shirts. Yeah.
For sure. And honestly,
you weren't wearing Annapolis or Navy shirts. You were wearing Wharton.
Yeah, that's right. So bottom line is I didn't get into the schools I really wanted to get into. And I thought that I'd be happy at some of the schools that I did get into. But when the rubber met the road, I just wasn't that excited. And I was like, you know what? That's probably a signal that I should listen to. I'm going to take another hack at it. And so what I ended up doing was reapplying. And I applied to different schools, some of the same schools, like Wharton. I applied again. And bottom line is the second time around, I ended up getting into Wharton first round. It was incredible. And I was super lucky to get in. So the time in between, I essentially used as, basically like when I didn't get in the first time, I took like a weekend to just, feel bad about myself for 16 seconds. And then I was like, all right, what are you going to do about it?
There you go.
And so I got up and essentially was like, this is a gap year for me to like figure some things out, learn, do some things that I've never done before. And I'm going to make this a productive year, period. And so I ended up doing 6 months working at a venture capital firm in California. That was just essentially my way of getting my foot in the door to see like, hey, how does entrepreneurship work? Let me hang out with entrepreneurs.
How does entrepreneurship work?
Generally, I was just like, I don't know like what these guys were doing. I don't know what the funding process is. I don't know anything about finance. How do you look at a business and say like, you know what, I'm going to give you money versus, hey, I don't think you're going to get any money from me. That was all like, these were massive gaps in my knowledge. So I was just like, I feel like this is the right spot for me to figure that out. So I was lucky that they took me on and just allowed me to learn. And then I did another 6 months working for a congressman in DC as like a special assistant. So if you're familiar with that world, I was essentially body man for this congressman. And so that was particularly because I was kind of considering doing a dual MBA, MPP, Master's in Public Policy. And so I kind of wanted to just like, I was interested in policy. I'd always been sort of like interested in that world coming from the military. And so it was something that I was kind of like, I just wanted to dip my toe into it and just see what there was to learn. And honestly, it was an incredible time. I worked for an incredible guy. And short and long of it is like, just at the point I was at in life, it just made more sense for me to just stick to the straight up MBA. So that's what I did. So showed up to Wharton, 2 years of that. And the rest is history. I met my co-founder there and a lot of other great people.
How difficult were the classes, do you think, at Wharton? And I asked this because when you're doing, I guess, pretty much any graduate program, when I was in law school, I could take a certain amount of credit hours at a different one of the schools. Right. So at St. Louis University, I did, and they got a pretty good MBA program there. But the MBA classes, and compared to the law classes, to me, were an absolute joke.
Like, the MBA classes were?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I've got to believe it was just because of the way the program was structured. Mm-hmm. But I'm in law school full time. You're not sleeping. You're constantly reading, memorizing case law. Versus you get to the MBA program, it was a lot of application, which was good, but it was so much easier to read, so much easier to comprehend. I just clicked easier. Mm-hmm. So just curious, how you thought Wharton was, because I got to imagine it was pretty difficult.
I wonder if that was. I mean, you have like a analytical, quantitative mind, I would guess, and so a lot of the MBA is finance, accounting, et cetera. So it is like number driven. And so I'm curious if that was a driver. But I could say my, an MBA program, really a master's program, as far as I understand, in my experience in the master's programs, it's whatever you want to make of it. So it's as hard as you want it to be, or it's as relatively easy as you want it to be. It can only be so easy. I mean, like, there are core classes in that core curriculum that you have to take. At least, again, every school is different, but like, in my experience at Wharton, there are classes that you will take. You will take microeconomics. You will take accounting. You will take some corporate finance class, marketing. You're going to take these core classes, and then you can like kind of get off road and follow your interest, follow your professional ambition. And, I mean, at the end of the day, like, how deeply do you want to understand accounting? You can get through it and sort of like, probably put a little bit of work in, generally kind of figure it out. And at the end of the day, if you're in a master's program like that, chances are you're late 20s, early 30s. And, grades matter a lot when you're 19 years old. And it's like the only thing that you have to measure yourself against other folks. But at that point in life, you've got more going on. And at the end of the day, like, yes, I want to do well. I want to learn, but I'm not as concerned about making sure I'm like, in the top 2% of the class. Like, it's less.
This is where the MBA versus the law school.
Right. And so like, it's a different situation. And Wharton has and there's a handful of business schools that have like a very, interesting take on how they manage that. But the short and long of it is, at the end of the day, I thought there were certain classes that I was essentially like, hey, you know what? This is something I really care about, and I really want to fully understand, because this is going to be helpful to me, regardless of what I do. Say accounting being a good example. There were other classes that I was like, what I really want to know is like the most important 50% of this class, and the rest of it, I'm kind of like, I know that this is way beyond the scope of anything that I'm professionally interested in or likely to encounter. And so I'm going to take this time, and I'm going to allocate, because I'm an adult and I know what's best for me. I'm going to take my finite resources and apply them in the most intelligent way that I can. So like, long answer to a short question. I thought the curriculum was manageable, not necessarily easy, particularly coming from somebody with no business background whatsoever. I was like learning it all for the first time. And so I think anybody, they obviously, they do some, they select for folks who can, like, say, get a good score on the GMAT or the GRE or whatever it is. And so you've already demonstrated that you can handle the information. Like, this is not going to be rocket science for you. And it's a question of just applying yourself in the way that makes sense for you and your ambitions.
I think, I would have to imagine a top school like Wharton would just be way more difficult than what I experienced at St. Louis University. And that's why, besides ego, I wanted to strive, if like I was going to get an MBA for one of those top programs. And I'm not going back for an MBA anymore. I did enough. I personally did enough school. I had a guy tell me, a very notable guy, he said he liked what JDs know, but he likes what MBAs do.
Interesting. And
I've always like kept that like close to me, but I've kind of gotten like some on the job training through working in aerospace and grab and hold a lot of like, the business concepts. And I'm a consultant and I work in like the business realm. Don't even do the legal stuff anymore. But I still wish I would have gotten like a Harvard MBA. And because every time I meet like a Wharton or a Harvard guy, like you, including you and Evan, sharp. You guys are just well organized, just have a very polished kind of way that you're like analyzing business, versus I think I could get there, and I think like if we both analyze the same problem, I would come to the same conclusion, but it's gonna be rough. Like,
I mean, honestly, like, I don't know, I probably would have, I'm certain that like when I was pre MBA, I kind of had the same a similar thought process. I was like, man, if I had that, like, if I got to go to this fancy school, then I'm sure that I'd be like much more, much smarter, and I'll know all these things. And at the end of the day, like, yes, I absolutely learned a lot at business school. That was like, one of again, a major inflection point in my life was learning what I learned there. And it was a lot of just general vocabulary, general conceptual sort of like understanding basically how different types of business models work and just how to sort of think in this new.
It's theory and application, right? Like a lot of that.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, to a whole nother level, I'd have to imagine.
It's just an intensive. It's like a 2-year time to intensively study this for me new subject matter. So that was like an incredible experience. But what I will say is that anybody sufficiently motivated can figure this stuff out. This is not rocket science. The concepts are straightforward. A library card, YouTube, these are things where you can kind of figure this stuff out. But obviously, like there is goodness in going to a business school if that's something that's on your horizon.
It's polished.
It's polished. It's like it's canned. Essentially, you go and they like, here is the core curriculum. Like you're gonna take these classes, and so you're like gonna know even what you may not know that you need to know. To say nothing of like having a strong network, people that you can reach out to in different business areas or functional areas, so you can like get answers to questions. Look for assistance where you need it. That's like an incredible aspect of having an MBA. But again, I don't think it's one of those things where folks can figure this stuff out if MBA or not, is I guess what I'm saying.
Oh yeah, there's plenty of entrepreneurs that I've seen.
100%.
You worked at a venture capitalist firm. I had worked with a startup firm, and I had experienced venture capitalists and kind of a Shark Tank kind of environment. And you'd see some guys with an MBA come in and we're just dog shit. And then you would see other guys who have never had any formal business experience, but just have a knack for it and just absolutely kill it. Very personable. So yeah, you go back and forth on whether or not an MBA is absolutely necessary, but I don't think anyone who's ever gotten one regrets it.
Yeah.
And that's the same for any school. Like, I don't practice law, but I don't regret my time in law school because the principles, my writing, like I challenge a lot of people to write better. I mean, even with the YouTube stuff, like now I'm using what I learned in law school and applying it to YouTube to give a different perspective than other people I see who have no education and don't know what the hell they're talking about sometimes. So it's giving me like principles and the principles that you've learned. But with you meet Evan. Did you come out of business school with VRB Labs?
Yeah.
You did? Okay.
So no kidding, Evan, my co-founder, and I met in, no kidding, the first week of school.
And Evan's another veteran.
Evan's another vet, yeah.
100% veteran-owned company.
Army guy, West Pointer, so we have like 300.
Oh, he's Academy guy.
Yep. Okay. So 364 days a year, we are best of buddies, and then there's the one day you're actually coming up soon that, we'll have words. But anyway, the bottom line is we met in our first week at school, and a lot of the military folks, we all kind of like bonded.
First week of school, like orientation.
Yep.
Like he's got his little book bag on.
Yeah, exactly.
You're like, hey,
yeah, exactly.
You got you're clean cut.
Back to school. So it was like a lot of the military folks kind of bonded because we all kind of felt generally like fish out of water.
How'd you call each other out?
You just look a certain way, I think. You got the haircut, you like stand up a certain way. And
I get that all the time. Like, if you have a clean haircut and you just carry yourself well, it's like, you're military.
I've lost the clean cut piece for a little while. I'm sure I'll be back to it, but you still have
you still carry yourself a certain way.
That's good to know. No, I wasn't so sure, but especially at the time, we were still like most of us in that boat. We all kind of had like the haircut still. We were clean shaven and all that, and so anyway, we all kind of like at some of these orientation events, we all found ourselves clumping together and be like, "Hey, man, you military guy?" Like, "Oh yeah, I was Air Force. I was in the Army. I was in the Navy, whatever." And so anyway, we all bonded, and then generally speaking, Evan and I got along great and sort of bonded over this shared experience in the military, shared interest in entrepreneurship, and really a shared interest in just health and wellness generally. And so over time, we just kind of spent more and more time together, and just we're kind of BS and talking about different ideas we had, yada yada yada, and sort of like in parallel, we were also trading ideas about like, hey man, I'm banged up. I'm pain and inflammation. I got trouble sleeping. Resting level anxiety 11. And so we're kind of in the same boat, thinking to ourselves like, look, man, we're finally out of the military. We can finally try some of these things that we're not allowed to use in the military. And so CBD kind of like popped up on our radar as a potential solution, like a clean, natural solution to these issues. And so we did a heap of research on our own, just looking at like the existing research from, folks like the National Institutes of Health to see like, okay, is this real? Is this really a substance that can help us? And then we bought some products to essentially share. I bought a set of products. He bought a set of products. I took half, he took half, and we've swapped just to see like what was going to work. And we ultimately kind of discovered that like there is a lot of benefit to be found from these compounds, but nobody was doing it in the way that we thought was the right way to do it. So there's a lot of issues, like the products themselves were sort of like a lot of ingredients that we weren't really fired up to put into our bodies. Really opaque manufacturing practices, to say nothing of like,
that's a big problem.
100%. Like, I don't know what's in this. I don't know where you guys are doing this. I don't really know who's behind this product, such that I can feel comfortable that like you guys are transparent enough that I can feel good about, and obviously the industry is sort of like in its nascent phases. So like, it was just a lot of that, to say nothing of the fact that like brand wise, there was nothing pointing at folks like us. There was like, everything from super crunchy, kind of like feminine, like wellness type brands. And then there was like, Cheech and Chong kind of like, weed culture brands. And I was like, none of this is really speaking to me in a way that like, I feel good about these people, like buying these products from these folks. And so we essentially like went out and did a nationwide search to find an R&D team to help us build the products that we would want to take. And so we found them in California, and ultimately we 6 months later of the R&D process, we landed on the products that we were proud of. So essentially
all the products,
2 of the 3. So we got 2, and then maybe 2 months later came up with the 3rd. So the first 2 were Work and Rest, the ingestibles. So Work is sort of our daytime formula for focus and anxiety. Rest is our nighttime blend for restful sleep. And then finally, Recover is our topical blend for pain and inflammation.
Right.
And essentially that covered for us what essentially scratched our own itch, the problems that we had, that covered down on the issues that we had. So we sort of like beta launched while we're still in school. We were doing the MBA and then working on this at night. And we beta launched with those 3 products with just like friends, family, classmates at Wharton, friends from the military, et cetera, and just said like, look, we're just trying to see basically if you like it, if it works. We had done testing. We knew that it worked. We were pumped to put it in folks' hands, and we just got like an overwhelming amount of feedback that like, man, this is really good stuff. And so ultimately, second semester of our MBA program, second year, we're like, Evan and I looked at each other, we're like, hey man, like, I think we have a business here. I think this is a real thing. So like, let's run it down. And we, shook hands. We're like, hey, I'm not going to recruit for any other normal job. Let's run it down. And so we've been doing that ever since.
That's awesome. And I will say personally, there's no bullshit. And I've told you before, I have the same problem when I'm researching for wanting to recommend products. People ask me all the time through Instagram or YouTube, what supplement brands would you recommend? And it's ones that are the most transparent, the ones that show clinical research, and ones that show their sourcing of ingredients. Because I remember studying FDA regulation, not in law school, but in undergraduate for biochemistry, because they expect a lot of these people to go work in labs, and you got to be familiar with the process. And these supplements don't have to go through the FDA regulation. You can have an FDA regulated facility, like brands like First Form will show on their packaging, but that doesn't mean the FDA actually analyzes the composition and why you're using certain products. Yep. So when it came to CBD, and I'm a huge fan of CBD, I had used, I think, 8 total brands that are out there, not the Cheech and Chong ones that I saw, but more notable brands. There was things like Charlotte's Web, CBD Distillery was a big one. And I had eventually landed on, when I started my YouTube working like for affiliate marketing to help raise money to continue doing it, was CBDMD. It's because being a publicly traded company, they had to publish a lot of documents out there, and that gave me the transparency that I was looking for. Then we met, and you were like, hey, you know, I have a CBD company too. And I was like, well, that's like super interesting. I'd love to try it and stuff. And I tell you, like, it was better than anything I used with CBD MD, which I think is probably one of the more notable and considered one of the top brands out there. They sponsor a lot of different podcasts and a lot of people of notoriety. So I was like, I'm immediately going to stop. Like, I love supporting small startups. So I was like, I'm going to stop working with CBDMD and use the VRB Labs stuff. Cause it's like, it's no bullshit. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't tell you. First of all, I'd be like, hey, stuff was pretty good.
Pretty good.
And if I kind of liked it, I would just have said, hey, I like it. But I went the extra and I was like, I'm going to quit working with CBDMD and just use your stuff because I love it. I don't know how you guys came up with these compounds. I think the topical is better than what CBDMD have. It's much stronger. Anybody that I've had try it loves it. They're like, they call it's BioFreeze on steroids. Is like they feel it and they're like, oh my God, it's like instant. Had a couple friends come in town to do CrossFit for the first time. And I was like, one buddy was a cop. He didn't want to use it, but I used it on the other guy and he was like, absolutely loved it. And the rest is phenomenal. Like I had used CBD before bed and wanted to use my Whoop strap to measure HRV. We had talked about it before. You said, hey, you should do some analysis with your Whoop strap. And I was like, well, I've done it before and nothing changed. Yeah. My HRV is 10 points higher when I use rest versus when I don't, which is phenomenal. And it tastes pretty good too. Like, you know, I look forward to it. And then work right now, if you're watching, I got recover and rest on the table and work's not here because work is actually sitting at my desk and I use it sometimes because for me, the work compound, like I'm not an anxious person. Like I like rest for sleep, but some days kind of need it. And I took it. I got like a half sleeve I'm working and that could be give you a little anxiety. So I took some work before I went to that appointment, but you know, big testimonial for me that your product's awesome.
Dude, that means everything, man. Like this is something that, I've just become passionate about it. Obviously, like, you know, this is something I feel very strongly about. I'm spending my days and my nights and my weekends like on this business. And it's because I believe in it, man. You know, obviously I'm a biased observer here. Like I love our products and they're literally built initially for me. Evan and I were like, we're going to build them. We're going to scratch our itch.
That's what you're supposed to do
for us. And it just so happens that there's a lot of folks like us that, you know, sleep poorly and are just trying to feel good and perform well. You know, folks who are banged up, whether they be former military folks or folks like you who are just grind it out. And really just want to feel good. I mean, at the end of the day, these are products that we're like exceedingly proud of. And again, you know, when Evan and I kind of sat down to figure out, you know, what we wanted to be when we grow up, we're at business school. We're like, all right, man, like what are we supposed to do? What do we want to do, et cetera. One of the things that we identified with starting this business was just like, you know, regardless of what we do in business, particularly in entrepreneurship, this has to be something that we feel very, very good about, and we can, like, you know, approach the world with integrity as we have in the past. Just feel like we're sort of like leading with that integrity piece, which really just translates to like, are these products that we, no kidding, believe in? Are they safe? Are they effective? Are they clean? Do they do what they say they're going to do? Period. Dot. And that came back a resounding yes for us, which is like incredible. And hearing that from folks like you is just like, it fires me up, man. It truly does. But also like the other piece for us was like, there has to be sort of a larger mission, you know, like both of us left the military, but after a lot of beers and just shooting the breeze and kind of figuring out who we wanted to be, it was absolutely clear to us at some point that there needed to be like a larger mission. Like we still need to be sort of like service oriented and service minded if we want to live the lives that we truly want to live. And so we also give like 10% of our profits to veteran charities. And so right now that's we actually just recently inked a deal with Team Red, White, and Blue, one of the largest veteran nonprofit organizations in the country, a group of folks that we admire and that really do good work for vets. And so at the end of the day, you know, it's a business. Like it's hard. It's a startup. So like, we are cranking, burning the midnight oils consistently.
And that's incredible. Now I want to ask you, so a lot of stuff I really want to dig into in the podcast too is getting more transparent with the products, like you were just talking about. So this 10% to red, white, and blue, your products, it's not cheap.
Yeah.
Like is it the quality of ingredients? Is it the scale? Is it, is it the 10% going to red, white, and blue? Like what is it that, that creates that price point for people?
Yeah. I mean, it's a combination of all of it essentially. Like at the end of the day, we are sourcing, the best and
you do have on your website, which I thought was really cool, this globe, like the map, the heat map of like where the ingredients come from. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, thanks. It's something, again, a lot of this, like everything that you sort of see, whether it's like the products themselves or like the way we've sort of built things like that onto the website, et cetera. Again, just scratching our own itch. Like these are questions is like that we had, like, where's this stuff coming from?
This is the opaqueness you saw from other brands.
Exactly. And we're just like, this is something to solve for. It was a question that we had. And again, the hypothesis is that folks like you would have the same sort of issues that we had with. Well,
I'll go another level. Products. Like I'm getting in there. Like we're going to court. Like I'm digging in. I'm researching. I'm trying to find who you guys are. That's why I thought this podcast was going to be such a great idea, because then the same people that are like me out there can just see who the person is creating these products and hear from the horse's mouth what you guys are doing.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like we are building the company that we couldn't find in the market, and something that, again, that we're super proud of. We're proud of the products. We're proud of like how we're doing it. And we're proud to be like partnered with folks that have sort of like a similar mindset. This is like kind of the no assholes rule applies. Like good folks with high integrity that are folks that we would want to hang out with are the folks that we're partnering with.
Sure.
At the end of the day.
And then, that's why I want to touch on the price point too, because of all the things that you were talking about. And when I'm analyzing products, price point's going to be the first thing that comes to mind. Yep. But I personally don't find it to be high. But if you analyze the market, it is on the higher end. But all the stuff you guys do, who you are, and how you are trying to build this transparent company all makes sense to me. And I think it's just going to be that way probably for the history of the I don't see you guys probably coming down on that either.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that could happen with scale. It's something that we ultimately, like Evan and I have had this conversation 100 times about, really wanting to get these products into folks' hands. Like this is something that as no kidding changed my life, and it's changed his, and we feel strongly about like getting these products out the door. So at scale, you can obviously, this is like one of the great part about going and taking economics classes in an MBA program. You're like, oh yeah, like if I could like ramp up the scale, I can probably bring the price down. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Sell volume versus.
I mean, everyone gets that. You go to Costco.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
again, you need like a
micro level.
You need YouTube or a library card to figure that out. But bottom line is, yes, at scale, like that could possibly happen. But right now, just generally with like at the scale we're at, with the quality of ingredients, et cetera, and the quality of work that we put into making sure that everything is happening at, whether it would be like the processing, the manufacturing, third-party lab testing several times over, it just all costs money. And at the end of the day, it's something that we feel like we must do to put out the level of product that we want to put out.
Is that on your website, the third-party testing?
I'm certain it is.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed on other CBD websites, when you look at it, even the company FitAid had sent me their hemp aid before. You can go and see like the third-party testing of exactly how much of the different like CBD compounds, CBD compounds are in there.
Yep, we do that.
Okay.
Every product comes with it's called our certificate of analysis.
That's what it is. It's a
third-party lab test where they, no kidding, just look and see like what is in it. Let's make sure
this bottle has this much.
Everything that we said is going to be in there is in there, and the things that shouldn't be in there are not in there. That's at the end of the day. And we do that not only on an individual basis for each individual ingredient before it goes in, but then once we put the blends together, we then go back and do it for the whole sort of blend to see like, okay, no kidding, what are the proportions, like how much is in here, et cetera, et cetera.
Which also adds to the cost, because that's another step. And is that a legal requirement?
No.
It's not?
No.
See, that's odd, because like I see the CBD companies doing it, but it seems like that would be something interesting that supplement companies would do. one big thing with supplement companies in terms of pre-workout and things like that you can just go to GNC and buy, or the big companies have, is there's a lack, and I see it with clinical research all the time when they're studying the compositions of these supplement companies, is that the ingredients aren't consistent. Right. Like certain percentages of caffeine is a big stimulant for people's pre-workout, and the cheaper brands will tend to have it's like the equivalent of like 20 cups of coffee in a single serving, because it's just mixed poorly. So you would think like a certificate of analysis would be something that you would want to like make a requirement, just so you can see like the compounds and the composition is consistent.
I mean, it's like the Wild West. And at the end of the day, that's something that we felt extremely strong about. And honestly, it was like one of the primary, maybe the primary impetus for starting the business was like, dude, this is, particularly given that it's CBD, and it was like, it had a ton of stigma coming from, the military. I no kidding, when I was in 5th grade, I won the DARE essay contest for my county for writing an essay about like why cannabis is bad, why you should never take drugs. Cannabis is terrible. It'll fry your brain, et cetera, et cetera.
I didn't even graduate there.
Well, yeah, well, there you go.
I went to Disney World. I missed it.
Classic case. Well, I got enough learning for the both of us. So I had all that, like that baggage, and it was one of those things where I was like, I had learned a little bit. I heard from some folks like, hey, this is something that's good to go. But once I sort of like dove into it, I was like, man, like I would feel more comfortable if I was dealing with a company that was like very transparent and sort of just had a high level of trust, high level of integrity, and I could sort of like look and see for myself what was going on. And again, at the end of the day, like I couldn't find it, we couldn't find it, and so that's essentially the company we set out to build. And we're on our way.
So as veteran owned, and we talked about this, how do you get the military to lift their ban on something like CBD?
Well,
does it happen?
I think so. I do think so. I based on discussions that I've had and reading between the lines, my understanding is that CBD is banned in the military specifically because THC is banned in the military.
Right.
THC is banned. Got it. Copy. Can't have guys getting high. Okay, fine. But initially, when sort of CBD kind of came on the scene, and THC became more of a like legalized in, say, Washington State, where I was stationed for a while, guys were coming in, popping hot on their urinalysis, and they'd come in, and say, hey, you just tested positive for THC. And guys would come in and say, oh, I didn't smoke weed. I took CBD. I thought I was allowed to do that. Is that not okay? And then, there was like, it was a BS factor there. 100%. So the military ultimately came out and was like, look, okay, we've heard enough of this BS. Like now nobody can take any of it. No excuses. Like if you pop hot for THC, you are going to have a problem, period, dot. And there's no more, we're just going to take away this excuse for you. That's my understanding of why the ban has happened. It happened on a branch by branch basis. So like the Navy did it, then the Army did it, then the Marine Corps did it. I'm not sure about the order, but like that's kind of how it went down. But I do ultimately see, I mean, you can see from the VA's perspective, it's not, legal is not the right word, but it is federally legal, period. But I'm not sure exactly how they go about permitting or doing all that. But the VA is well on their way to taking a good hard look at natural solutions to problems, whether it be CBD for pain, stress, sleep. There's even studies that are happening right now for psychedelics, et cetera, for PTSD, you name it. So I think the VA is like honestly on the right path, and where the VA goes, I think there's evidence to support that the military will follow. To say nothing of the fact that there is legislation, it's like held up right now, but it is on Capitol Hill, floating around to actually legalize CBD or get it off the banned substance list for, I believe it's the Marine Corps. And if that happens, then, it's just a matter of time before the others come down. So short and long of it is it's like, yes, there's a lot of stigma. There's still a lot of like question marks. But there's a lot of incredible data and studies to show that, and just general experience to show that particularly for, again, guys like us who've like kind of put our bodies through a lot. Other guys, we've got ambassadors on the VRB team who are, former SEAL team guys, former Delta Force operators,
I know you
fighter
just see
pilots.
so many people benefiting from that.
And that's like, these are guys that were like really psyched to be helping, because like these are people that are just in pain, and they can't sleep, and they're stressed out, and they're hurting. And these are like clean, quality products that can like help folks get what they need. And so we're proud of being able to just get in there and be sort of like a white hat player in the space that like folks can trust and just know exactly what they're going to get,
Yeah. Like, I personally have no problem with THC. I used to when I was younger, and I personally don't do it, but from what I've seen, the benefits of it, and even THC in conjunction with CBD has shown some very promising like recovery benefits.
Yep.
So, I don't get the stigma with it, and especially CBD. It's amazing the lack of education people still have, and I totally understand it. Anytime I mention CBD or like, hey, you want to try rest or you want to try work or anything like that, they're like, oh, is it going to get me high? It's like the cleaned up cousin of the of THC. So there's still going to be that stupid stigma, even with THC, in my personal opinion, of this old school thought that it shouldn't be something available to service members or police officers, which just absolutely drives me nuts.
Yeah.
And I think there's also a problem currently with the clinical research with CBD. A lot of it's anecdotal. Legally, if I were to counsel you on like how you're supposed to talk about its benefits, you're supposed to say may promote, right? Not that it will promote, even if there are definitive clinical studies, definitive quote unquote, that it can do it, because some of those clinical studies lack certain oversight in the quality of CBD being used as well, because it still is a wild west. For
sure.
Yeah,
for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, man, like this is something that it's a continuum. There's going to be a process. But I honestly had the same assessment as you. Like, this was just like up space that was the Wild West. It was hard to kind of like piece it together. And I did kind of carry a lot of that stigma myself, kind of coming into the space, and slowly but surely identifying like what my hangups were, and then just answering those questions. Like, okay, why is cannabis stigmatized in our culture? Okay, got it. Why are we okay with a 6-pack of Budweiser on a Wednesday night after work to take the stress meter down? Why are we cool with that? And this, ostensibly, if you can find a no kidding high quality CBD compound, clean, effective, natural, safe, etc., why am I looking at these two things differently? And why am I thinking to myself, do people like me do stuff like this? Why am I having that thought process?
Do people like me?
Yeah. Do guys like me do stuff like this?
Yeah.
And then you slowly but surely answer those questions, and you're like, oh, like this is actually okay. And a lot of this is sort of my, is couched in socialization and sort of the culture that I was brought up in, and who I think I am and who I want to be and all that. And you're like, okay, I've answered all these questions, and now I'm actually okay with not only being like, in my case, like being a consumer of these compounds and goods, but also like ultimately looking at myself and saying, hey, is this a business that I'm proud to be in? And yeah, it is. Like, this is a business that, like, again, it's going to help a ton of people, and we happen to have a fantastic set of products to reach out and touch folks like us that may also feel stigmatized in that way.
Yeah, and just an outside perspective, talk to you about your business. It seems like you have this very unique role in how you and Evan have like created the business, where you had like passion with it, but it seems like your passion continually grows the more you guys are like unraveling how great CBD is, or how much you can benefit the military community and stuff like that. Is that right?
For sure, man. And a lot of it is like, we just get it into folks' hands. Like, not naming names here, but there is a guy who is one of the most amazing human beings I've ever met in my life. He's a former Delta Force operator, which, if you don't know what that is, it's like, imagine the gnarliest thing you can do in the military, and then do the thing that's like harder than that, or like more intense or more prestigious than that. These guys are intense. So this guy did that for a long time, and he he was one of the guys in the Battle of Mogadishu, the Black Hawk Down.
Oh, really?
Movie was based off.
I've met some of those guys.
One of those dudes. He's rad. He's like, he's a friend. He's a mentor. He's an incredible person. But like, he told us essentially right out of the gate, Jason Evan, he's like, man, I like you guys and I want to help and all that. But it's just I don't know about the compound. I don't know about like the whole CBD cannabis thing. Like, I don't know. Let me know how I can help, but like, I don't know that I want to try it or whatever. I'm like, yeah, man, that's fine. Understand. We're not gonna like, twist your arm or anything like that. And then ultimately, weeks down the line, he was like, hey man, I'm in pain. And I've reached my wit's end. I'm willing to give it a go. So, are we good? And I was like, 100%. Got him a package immediately. And within a couple weeks, and I'm trying to like tell the story in a way that's not going to like out him or anything, but like the bottom line is he ended up calling and he's like, hey man, this shit is incredible. I love it. I appreciate it. He's like, I was finally able to I haven't been able to run in a long time. And now I'm back at it. And so the short and long of it is like, to get more like back to your point, helping people and having guys that we respect and that, we feel like we're doing, I don't know if service is the right word, but like we're helping folks that we respect and that we ultimately love. And when we get the feedback from them, dude, it's like freaking high octane gasoline. It like fires me up. That gives me, I have a hard time going to sleep after that because I'm just like, we got to go. We got to like get this into more guys' hands. Another guy that I'm thinking of right now, Vietnam vet. Actually, his son is one of our friends, former Navy SEAL. His son has the products, and his dad, Vietnam vet, essentially was like, "Hey man, I haven't slept. Like he had self-reported pretty bad PTSD." And he self-reported that he had been unable to get like a decent night's sleep since like the early 90s. And so he's like, I'm willing to try anything. Like I'm like in tough shape. So his son, our friend, got him some of our rest product, the sleep blend. And within maybe like a week, 2 weeks later, we got we have a chat bot on our website where somebody can like just do basically a direct message to Evan and I.
Oh, it's you guys doing the chatbot?
100%, dude. Small business. Let's
right.
Go. But it came right to us, and it was like, I don't want to again out this guy, and I don't want to butcher what it actually said, but it said something to the effect of like, fellas, I haven't slept in a long time. This is incredible. Thank you. I'm an old vet, a Vietnam vet, and this is like changing the game for me. First 7-8 hour nights of sleep I've had in years and years and years. And like, Evan and I are cranking, we're working at the WeWork, we're doing all kinds of stuff, man. Like we've got like new products that we're working on. We're trying to build a marketing presence and like, build brand awareness. And that was the thing where we saw that. And we just like sat down and we're just like looking at each other like, dude, we're doing something like,
hell yeah, man.
We're helping people. This is something we can be like very proud of. And we're freaking fired up to do it. So every time we get like feedback like that, which is now, thank God, coming like more and more often, is it's like exhilarating. It's super fun. Like it makes all of it feel worth it. And I'm super fired up about this. I really am passionate about it.
Yeah, I still think you guys are in the infancy of the CBD market, sure. Even though a lot of companies have gotten quite a bit of a head start, but your guys' product, it's not a matter of will you grow, it's just like when you guys are going to grow. Yep. The more people that use your product, the more people I think are going to find is superior to, it's better than anything I've used before.
Dude, that means everything, man. Honestly, I'm not joking. That's like the lifeblood that I'm like,
yeah, and
I'm eating like one meal a day. I'm drinking a heap of coffee, and like when I get feedback like that, like that's all I need to keep keep this train on the tracks.
Yeah, and I'll be blunt again with anybody. It's just a great product, and I like anybody that's going to try CBD. I am like encourage you to try VRB Labs. Now, I do want to ask about the name VRB Labs. You've told me before it's VR. Like I kept saying it's just VRB because it's all capitalized and stuff. Your guys' logo is pretty badass, but it's
dude.
VRB.
VRB. Yep. So the idea was the again, this is like over a beer on a Friday night when we're in business school, and that the idea was like, don't tell me, show me. We are people of action. We get stuff done. And so verb, the part of speech, to run, to jump, to work, to love, all these things are like things that we felt very passionate about. And at the end of the day, this whole sort of idea was focused on like, Evan and I are just talking constantly about like, who do we want to be? What kind of person do I want to be who do I aspire to be? And, if you think of things in terms of like, Maslow's hierarchy, at the end of the day, if you aspire to be the best husband, son, brother, sister, wife, daughter, whatever that you aspire to be, those are all like incredible things, and 100% you should do that. But before you can do that, you have to take care of yourself first. And if you are underslept, if you are in pain, if you are inflamed, if you are so stressed that you are sort of like frantic or otherwise, paralyzed, you can't go do these higher level things. You can't pursue, your best physical life. You can't be mentally where you ought to be. You can't pursue the spiritual or personal growth goals that you have to be that member of your family, the member of your community that you aspire to be. And so the idea was like, you don't just talk about it. It's great to read books. It's great to have conversations and trade, stories and techniques. But at the end of the day, you got to get your ass up and go for that run. You got to get your ass up and go, meditate or do whatever it is, ice bath, whatever it is that is going to help you achieve your goals. You got to get up and do it. And that is a verb. That is not an adjective. That is not a noun. You got to get up and freaking go. And so this was our kind of get up and go juice. It's like we looked at these products. It's like, these are tools in our toolkit to help us become the people that we want to be. And they're just tools. These are not going to like solve your issues whole hog. There's no magic potion out there. Magic. This is just like a tool in your toolkit that will be helpful to you. And so for us, Verb sort of captured that. And yeah, again, it's something we're super proud of. And
you guys have fully embraced the military persona. You got the olive drab hat, like, and it looks great. Like, I love it.
If the shoe fits, that's honestly who we are. So
how does that test with the female market?
Man, we haven't really gotten to the point where we're like doing like a whole, I
no anecdotal.
We've tested. We've not like done any like, market testing or anything like that. But yeah, anecdotally, we make products that are gender neutral,
right?
But we do have, generally, because part of it is like, my partner and I are out in front of the brand, and it just so happens we appeal more to dudes.
But what's interesting is that when I think of people that I personally know take CBD, or if I think of the brands of CBD, or even if you're listening to like Rogan or people he has on his podcast, they're all men. Like, I haven't really heard a woman sit down and like break down why she takes CBD.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like we definitely skew more male, and I think that's just sort of natural.
But I wonder if it's the industry.
I don't think so. I think there's again, for us, we do have like a pretty strong cohort of first time and repeat customers who happen to be female, which is great. But I think there's also sort of a brand piece at play here where, there are different brands that speak to different folks. And obviously like there's a
Black Rifle.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Different, like if you can like, make an editorial, if you can stake a position as a brand and say like, hey, here's what we're for. And at the end of the day, if you say that, that means like we are for you or for this person. That implies that we are not for this person. You have to sort of stake that claim to really, I think, to live that sort of brand ethos. And so I don't know, man, like we've got like women on our, a couple incredible women who are ambassadors, who are one won the CrossFit Games a handful of years ago, Heather Heppensteel. She's awesome. And others who are on our team that are, they're incredible and they love the product and we're fired up to have them.
And that's a certain caliber. Like I was going to say, like people in the CrossFit realm seem to gravitate towards more, I don't want like masculine kind of products and stuff, but I mean, I see you guys too transcending like a Yeti brand. Like I know Yeti was an outdoor equipment brand, but now it's just like everybody wants Yeti now.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter any part of your gender. But I also know something I remember from taking business schools and MBA program is that when you're going to attack a market like you guys are, you can't just say everybody.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. Like
Right.
you guys have to put focus in, and then you guys have to pinpoint it, which obviously you guys are doing.
Right. And honestly, like the good news for us, and I think you're 100% right. That's just like, if you're for everybody, you're for nobody, kind of a thing. And that just makes it hard. And honestly, the really great news for us is that, again, this comes naturally because we're building products for ourselves. And we're building a brand that would appeal to somebody like me, which is maybe,
and you should always
a little bit more hardcore, a little bit more sort of like tactical focused. Like, hey, at the end of the day, I'm not interested in BS. Give me the information I need to make a decision. Tell me what this is for, prove it, and then let's go. So at the end of the day, these are tactical solutions to problems that folks like us sort of face relatively regularly. And in doing so, in sort of like, naturally, or I should say maybe authentically, communicating in this way, we so happen to, I think, at least we're learning to appeal to folks that speak our language, that come from the culture that we come from, or aspire to the culture that we come from. And so, yeah, I guess like without really sort of knowing it, we did stake a claim, and we said like, hey man, here's what we do. Here's what we're for. Here's who we're for. And we're sort of unapologetic about it. And at the end of the day, I think that's like, I hope that comes through, and I hope that folks, can feel that, because again, we're authentically behind this, freaking 1,000%.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Now, the way I want to wrap up these podcasts is because I am fitness, I am products. So I want to know, what is your like essentials for like daily health and wellness? What you need at the gym? Is there a fitness tracker that you use? Are there products besides your own that you have to use daily that you swear by?
Yeah, 100%. And I don't know about you, but I've gone in like waves of like, being the guy with like, the fish oil and all of like, 50 different things on my shelf that I have to take every day. And I'm getting weird about it. But, yeah, at the end of the day, I've really sort of like pared that down to the essentials at this point in life.
That's a problem when you're talking about supplements. Like me working with a supplement company, I'm so bare bones anymore that it doesn't really work with a supplement company because they want you to promote and take all the shit.
For sure.
And I'm just like, you don't need that.
Yeah.
And they're like,
exactly.
Don't say that.
Exactly. I mean, honestly, like at this point in life, I take a high quality fish oil. No kidding, every day. That's an inflammation piece for me. I wear Whoop band. I started doing this over a year ago. I guess maybe, over a year ago, year and a half maybe. And honestly, I kind of went back and forth. I wasn't sure if this was going to be for me. I wasn't sure. Like, I kind of had gotten to the point where I had pretty good body feel, where I'm like, I know when I'm underslept. I know when I need to take it easy. I know I can generally feel when I'm ready to go or not. So I was like, yeah, I'll try it out. I was like, well, at worst, I'll wear this for a couple months, try it out, and then I'll can it, give it to somebody.
When's your 4.0 come in?
Dude, yeah, your guess is as good as mine. I'm like, I'm kind of itching for it.
I've become
bad. I've become like a weirdo like about it. I love looking at the data. First thing I do in the morning is I lay there and I sort of just lay there. I'm like, okay, how do I feel? How do I think I slept? Okay. Now, I think that I'm probably going to have such and such sleep score. I think my overall recovery score is going to be this. Cool. And then I use that to sort of help tweak my own body feel. So anyway, bottom line is I love it. It's incredible. It's helped me to really identify a couple things
and I want to say disclaimer too, because people think I'm a paid Whoop employee on my YouTube channel because I do have a series with Whoop. Mm-hmm. But when I find a product I love and genuinely have benefited from, like the Whoop strap, I not promote the hell out of it, but I will just scream it from the rooftops. I'm like, this thing has changed my life so much, especially another thing we were talking about was cardiovascular disease. I was more from a bodybuilding background and had ignored a lot of cardiovascular intensive training. You just go in the gym, you eat, you lift weights, and your heart sucks. Like it's shit. You're still unhealthy. You're a big hunk of meat, of muscle, but you suck. Like that's pretty much. And the cardiovascular strain focus has been my absolute favorite. And I do the same thing you do. And I experiment, just like I said with rest. Like, what is this changing in my body and why I love using the Whoop strap? And I do have my own join.whoop.com/Wes.
Let's go.
Right. And that's another reason I support the channel. So besides the Whoop, what else?
Yeah, man. I mean, obviously, like, you know, I'm a biased person here, but like, no kidding. I take particularly rest every night before I go to bed, about an hour. I mean, I've had terrible sleep.
Do you use the work every day?
Yeah, about twice a day. For me, it's like I pair it with coffee. So like, I'll have a coffee in the morning. I'll take a dropper of rest. It just honestly, for me, it allows sort of calm execution of the day's tasks without like, you know, sometimes task over. Again, I can get to a point where I've either feel sort of like frenzy. I'm like kind of getting after so many tasks all at once that I'm like, oh shit. Really? And that just sort of like allows me to sort of stop, look around, look at the alligators close to the boat and start methodically getting through my day. So it's just, it's helpful to me. The rest, and obviously the recover topical is, I have like super tight IT bands. So like every, honestly, day before work, every night before I go to bed, I'm all over that thing. So
for me, knees and lower back.
Like, yeah. And that's, you know, obviously this is like my own deal. So I understand that the skepticism if you're hearing it, but no shit. That's like,
oh no, I mean, same principles if you use any CBD, but
right.
Like, again, we use your shit, obviously.
Oh, man, let's go. So yeah, that's honestly like from a daily,
what shoes do you wear?
Perspective, in the gym.
Yeah.
Reebok Nanos.
Yeah.
For me, the Metcons, I've tried Metcons. I really love the Nanos. I love Innovate.
Which Nanos?
I don't know.
It's the previous. Is it the previous one or the current?
Honestly, I have no idea. I'm not really like that up on it. They're Nanos. I've worn a Nanos for a handful of years.
Yeah.
And they seem to not change all that much. Although this like latest one, it's the one that has kind of like a high back. If that makes sense. It's
probably the X, the 10 or the X.
That might,
the previous one.
Sense.
Yeah, they changed the current one, and their deal ran out with CrossFit.
That's right.
And then they wanted to separate, but Adidas is selling off Reebok, so I don't think the Nanos are going to be around anymore.
Interesting. Well, I mean, honestly, I've loved Innovate, and honestly, I love like the Metcons. The Metcons for me have been, they're fantastic for like Olympic lifting, things like that. But for whatever reason, I think just the way I have a bizarre shape of foot, and so I think that like it's a pretty rigid sole.
Well, I hate
what I recall.
The 6 was. I hated the 6. Or not hated. I shouldn't say hated. I liked it, not as good as the Nano X. I think the Metcon 7 is the most polished out of any CrossFit shoe I've ever used. And it's different.
I haven't seen it.
It's got a lower arc. It's got a less stiff sole because the sole on the 7 was super rigid.
Right. And that's my issue is like, I honestly, I don't know if it's like, I don't know really what it is, but they just, if I run too far in them or if I get too deep into a, like a chipper type workout, CrossFit style, kind of like, 20-minute deal, my feet just start to hurt, which is not great. So
I think it was the arch on those. For me, like I start cramping and like my feet never cramp.
Yeah. And that's what I found. So like for me, the Nanos had done a great job. I wore Innovates for a while. I don't know like where they went or what the deal is, or maybe
they're
I
still
just lost track of them, but
I just mentioned that like, so I'm doing like a shoe review series. I have the Go Rucks ballistic trainers coming in. And I'm really excited about those. The only thing that really kind of unnerves me, even though no company does this, is they're not made in America. Like everything on that website, I've got the Go Ruck pack, their backpacks, their clothes, all made in the USA. But for some reason, and I've tried to reach out to Go Ruck asking why, because they're veteran owned, like they're made in Vietnam, like ethically made in Vietnam. I don't, they put some adjectives in front of it, but why can't, they make an athletic shoe that looks somewhat decent?
Yeah.
Actually, there are no cross-training shoes that made in America.
Yeah.
There's running shoes that look like ass. They perform like ass.
Yeah.
But nothing for CrossFit.
Interesting. Honestly, that is sort of surprising. I don't know, man. Maybe there's a business opportunity there.
I'm sure there is, but like even like the New Balance shoes that are made in the USA don't look as good as the New Balances that aren't made in the USA. And I don't know why the design teams are different.
Yeah.
Like same materials. Why can't you just make the same shoe? I don't understand it. And Rogan recently had an episode with Jocko Willink because he has Origin in Maine. I don't know if you've ever seen their products, skis, really good boots. And he's like, you can make anything you want in the USA. I don't understand.
It's interesting. I'm sure there's a premium associated with it for, paying living wages in the States, but
you pay it.
You pay it.
Right.
Go.
So, okay, shoes. Any other tech? Like,
honestly, man, I don't think so. Like
minimalist.
I try to really like, at the end of the day, if you know what, this is a good one. AirPods, like on a run, if I'm alone, getting some in the gym, that's like, those things are sweet. Those are great.
They're great.
Great gear.
Do you not sweat a lot?
I don't know. Probably like any normal guy.
I'm not normal. Like
I got the gorilla sweat.
I mean, there's a reason. Like I pop the top super quick when I go in the gym because I overheat a lot.
Dude,
and one thing with the new Whoop strap is it takes body temperature. It gives you your reading in the morning. I would love to have like an active reading during a workout just to see like if I could test when I wear a shirt in a workout versus when I don't wear a shirt.
Surface of the sun.
Yeah. So when I wear AirPods, like you're covering up an ear hole. Like if you're out in the cold and the reason you put on earmuffs is because you're trying to keep heat in.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happens to me when I wear AirPods.
Well, they're freaking great for me, man.
Yeah. They stay in, they don't move. Like,
yeah,
I love them. I use them for work calls and stuff. I used to try to use them for exercise. I just can't.
Yeah. And honestly, like aside from that, I have very little, going on. I've got, plenty of foam rollers that like, these are the critical aspects of my life. Like I carry a lacrosse ball with me pretty much everywhere I go. In my work bag.
One thing, once you hit 30 and older, it's all about recovery, mobility. And that's what most of my gym bag is.
For sure.
What brand of supplements do you use?
Gosh, I don't really use supplements, to be honest. I have the fish oil I usually buy from
You don't take protein or anything?
No. But when I do, I do have a jug of protein up on my counter. So like periodically, I don't do it every day, but like periodically I'll throw it in a coffee or throw it in like a smoothie or something
good.
like that. Good to go, man. And I use Bubs. It's a
company
out of San Diego, California. It's great dudes, great brand. They're fantastic human beings. So
I'm gonna try them after you told me about them. They just have a very minimal product line.
Yeah, it's no kidding. I think it's just like collagen protein and MCT oil.
And the collagen protein tastes good.
Yeah,
and it mixes well with the coffee.
Yeah, 100%.
Because the one thing, like I had quit recently working with First Form for personal reasons. Basically, I just didn't like their affiliate program, and but I still like some of their products, including their cinnamon cookie batter protein, which turns coffee into a vanilla latte, and it's incredible.
Dangerous.
I look forward to it every single day, and I make a huge cup of coffee because
awesome.
Caffeine doesn't really affect me.
How about that?
Yeah.
Man, you are like the next link in the chain. That's awesome. But yeah, man, I mean, honestly, like, I try to keep it minimal, and like I don't, I've tried a bunch of different things, like a lot of guys, like you do stuff when you're like 20 years old and you're like, look, protein, let's go. And, did all that stuff. Yeah. And at this point in life, man, I'm like, if I can be pretty strong, I don't need to be the strongest. If I can be pretty fit, not interested in like, running a marathon every quarter or anything like that. But if I can do stuff that, keep me in the game, again, just to your point, man, like, it's a game of longevity. It's a game of recovery. It's a game of like feeling good and like, being capable and able to do the things I want to do in life, and being able to, if somebody was like, hey man, we're going to go run a 10-mile today, I'd be like, all right, good. Let's do it. If somebody wants to lift heavy weight, like let's go do that too. I'm never going to be like, the strongest squat in the gym at this point in life, but just being able to do stuff is all that's where my optimization sort of is focused.
That's what I always tell people, man. Like I got that Mount Hood little statue on the table. I didn't train for it, but I just felt capable enough that I can do this.
Yeah, you can do it. And that's, I mean, honestly, man, like generations past, I think that's not been a thing, man. Like you and your your 30s, you get to 40, and all of a sudden, like,
oh, you're dead.
You are like decrepit. You look like, you know, freaking Elmer Fudd, man.
I used
the
to think
party's
30
over.
was so old, and
you and me both.
And now I'm getting in better shape than I ever was. I could kick the shit out of who I was as a college athlete.
Right.
Just because maybe it's, I don't know, the science what we're learning. Like, people are taking better care of themselves. I think CrossFit is a big, like, I'm not in the cult of CrossFit. You can call it cross training or whatever the hell you want. It's just the community and the methodology behind it seems to be smarter than what I was doing before. Cardiovascular focus, just all these things, the free resources of people on podcasts and stuff. Another reason why I wanted to do something like this, for just more education for people. And it's just leading people to be younger later in life.
Yeah, dude, I completely agree, man. Like, this is, my hope is that, you know, this is kind of sinking into the zeitgeist, just general. Yeah. You know, not everybody needs to be a freaking marathon runner. Not everybody needs to be
David Goggins
snatching a $185. Like, I get it. You know what I mean? Like,
there's gonna be freaks out there.
Needs to be doing that, but like, there is goodness in folks eating a sensible, healthy diet,
right?
Moving their bodies, getting out into the sun, doing some things, like some pretty straightforward things that can really improve your life and
that's important.
Improve longevity, improve your quality of life, and like the way you feel about yourself, the way you show up for people that you care about, the way you show up for your community, not being a burden on your community. These are all things that are well within our grasp. It's just whether it's a question of education, whether it's a question of changing the culture. I mean, there's nothing harder than changing the culture, and we have found ourselves with a culture of, you know, sitting down, watching TV, microwaving some shitty food, you know, doing the easy stuff. And that's like great in a lot of ways, like food accessibility, you know, these are tough, complex problems, making food available to people who otherwise might have gone hungry in years past. Copy that. Got it. But now I think we are, you know, living in a country that has the resources, has the ability to get this done. And again, I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do. Like, if you know shit, really want to go eat that freaking Slurpee every day on your way home from work, God bless you. Have a good time. Right. But my guess is that you could be a happier, healthier person that's going to live a longer and healthier life if you maybe didn't do that. Although, that said, I will say, like, you know, there is a time to eat like mom's chocolate chip cookies. You know what I mean? Like,
you gotta earn
a psychopath about that. I've like played that game once or twice before in my life, and like, that's not that fun either. So like, doing the 80-20 thing, like, you know,
you 100% need to earn the shitty food and the days of being on the couch binge watching. Like, I was binge watching pretty much all day yesterday. And what I was binge watching was these documentaries of, have you seen the 14 Summits on Netflix yet?
I haven't watched it yet. I watched the trailer, I think 2 days ago. It looks epic.
That Rescue. So I'm a huge fan of Jimmy Chin.
Yeah, the guy's
incredible,
savage.
Awesome. So I watched 14 Peaks. I rewatched Free Solo, and then I watched Maru. All crazy. Jimmy Chin.
So sick.
All Jimmy Chin. And I'm just watching these people with human achievements, and my ass, I didn't feel guilty laying on the couch. It inspired me for sure. I don't need to be those guys. There's like, what you're saying is you don't need to be the David Goggins, the Cameron Haynes, these freaks of nature, Courtney Dawwalters, doing like these ultra marathons all the time. But what you do need to do is get off the couch and move your ass.
Yeah, for sure.
And be healthy, because that's what you need to do, and that's what your body craves.
Yeah.
I think a lot of like people have anxiety and stuff. They got a lot of pent up energy. Right now, like, I'm letting my tattoo heal. I can't get to the gym, and it's driving me up a wall. Like, I can't get my heart rate above 160 and do the stuff I want to do until later in the week. And I can feel I'm gonna have to take some of your CBD just to calm down.
I get it, man, dude. I think you and I are like very much simpatico on how we look at
the world and
life,
daily
generally
routines.
Speaking. And again, like, you know, I'm just some guy, but this is something like, you know, having a
some guy for now until your CBD brand blows up.
Yeah, that's right. Tell I'm some other guy. No, but at the end of the day, like, this is something I've like thought about for a long time, like and you too, how to live an optimal life. And how you define what that optimal point is obviously a personal thing. But like, again, for me, it's where how I show up physically, mentally, however you want to call it, spiritually, from a personal growth perspective, to be the person that I aspire to be to my friends, to my family, to in my community, etc. All of that stuff kind of like has me rowing in a direction. And for me, that has been the right answer. So it's some combination of like, getting the food right, getting the workouts right, learning to play guitar, trying to learn a new language. These are all things that are like important to me to achieve, like to become the person that I ultimately want to become. And again, at the end of the day, that's my optimal life. And I'm pretty pumped about where I'm sort of like landing at this point. I'm not where I need to be, but I'm getting there. And again, regardless of who you are, I highly recommend, at least just starting with things like, a sensible diet and getting up and looking at the sun in the morning. Don't look directly at the sun, but just like be out in the sunlight.
Sun gaze, yeah. It's like 15 minutes or something.
Take a walk, man. And you do those couple things and you are off to the races, to say nothing of a good night's sleep. Do those 3 things and you are 80% ahead of the game. So,
and before we wrap this up, the one thing to help you schedule all this, which I have now bought for multiple people, is that Ink and Volt planner that you showed
100%.
me.
I just bought.
You bought the 2022
Yep,
one?
I just got one. I got it in the mail today.
Yeah,
super psyched.
So this podcast will be released on Monday, December 13th. So I can say this, that I bought one for my sister recently because she was complaining about like time management. But I had a buddy who recently got into an MBA program at Washington University in St. Louis, and I was like, you got to get this planner, man.
Dude,
I love
clutch,
it.
Man.
I've got 2 journals I carry with me everywhere. One's a mind journal, that's for mental health, and it's made specifically for men. I recommend that to a lot of people too, because it's just got great exercises, because we don't talk about our feelings or write stuff down, and it has like prompts. And then the Ink and Volt planner, which I use for like my business side and a lot of stuff, and it just keeps me I love that thing.
Yeah. Dude, I'm not like I have nothing to do with this business.
Yeah.
I just heard about this years and years ago. I've probably used this planner for the last 5 years, and I just
This was before business school too?
Oh, for sure. I've been using this thing since like deep in the military. I
okay.
This thing.
Who told you about it?
I don't know. I don't even remember. Seriously, I don't.
Well, thank you to that person.
100%. Yeah, and that journal is incredible. And the one other thing I've discovered recently is it's called the Kurzgesagt. I don't really know how to spell that. Gratitude journal. I can give you the details, and you can throw it in the show notes or do whatever you're going to do. But bottom line is it is a gratitude journal that for me just speaks to me. And
it's kind of like probably the mind journal that has a lot of gratitude practicing.
A lot of gratitude, and it kind of gives you like periodically there'll be like a few pages to fill in, and then there's something to read. It's like, hey, here's the science behind gratitude, a gratitude practice. Here's no kidding why it works. Here's what they've proven. Here's yada, yada, yada. So it's kind of like interesting, interactive. And
did it talk about the science showing that it's better to receive gratitude than actually give it to someone?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been reading, I've been digging into a lot of gratitude stuff too, just from I just explore a lot of mental health stuff. I like holistic health, be physical and mentally healthy, just because I come from generations of men that were hard asses and not mentally healthy. But I thought that was so funny because it kind of tells you, like, some of the studies are showing it's actually better to receive gifts than to actually give them.
That is so funny.
But the science and the logic behind it is that it's because you're getting appreciation that you like. It's mostly gratitude that you didn't expect.
Interesting.
Yeah,
I haven't seen that. I'll have to check that out. That's so
it kind of makes sense. Like people are showing appreciation to you, so it uplifts you versus you giving it to someone else.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What I found is that for me, I did a gratitude journal for I think I did 2 of them, and I was like, I don't know, man. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm like, every day I'm kind of like, I'm pretty grateful.
Did it have prompts?
Incredible. We have friends and family. I'm like grateful for those things. Yeah. It's just like, what are you grateful for, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or, yes, it was prompts. I don't recall what they were, honestly. But I was just kind of going through the motions. I was just like trying to check a box for the morning. Like, all right, let me do my gratitude. All right, let me just get that out of the way. And I discovered that essentially, if I really sit and think about it hard, like, hey, I'm really grateful that I'm grateful for having a partner that I trust, that I love, that that has skills that I don't have on the business side. All those things, like no shit. That was one of my little gratitude items this morning. I was like, man, I'm fucking stoked.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm allowed to cuss on this podcast, but I'm stoked that I have Evan in a partner. He is money in the bank. He's a smart dude. He works really hard. He's a freaking nice guy. He is a person of high integrity, and I don't have to think twice about anything that he does. Period. Dot. And I was like really sitting thinking about it. Like, what if that went away? What if I didn't have that? And when I really start to like essentially think hard through why am I grateful for this? And like, what would happen if I didn't have this? And what would my life be like, et cetera, et cetera. What I've discovered is that I've internalized that feeling of gratitude where I'm like, oh, now I feel it. Like, man, I'm super grateful. This is actually really great. And that like feeling gives you this sort of like sense of well-being that you take through your day where you're like, yeah, life is actually pretty freaking good.
Right.
I have running water. Isn't it like, can you imagine like a life without running water? Like, this is like the fact that we have this, you turn a tap, it's incredible. And you sit really and think about that. And you're like, man, life is
people don't think about
life
that
is
stuff
incredible.
enough.
Well, I didn't for a long time. I was just like, in my own little head trying, dealing with the issues of the day and not thinking about it. But, if you really do work hard at it and try to feel that gratitude, man, you got most of us have a pretty goddamn good life.
Well, that comes with perspective too, because I know you've traveled all over the world. I've traveled all over the world, and you can only understand things like that if you've seen places that don't have those things.
For sure.
You don't know what you don't know. So people that live like these really cushy lives and don't get that perspective can't show gratitude for something they aren't aware they should show gratitude for.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. Travel widely, see other people, see how people do things. That's like 100% helpful in giving you a little perspective about how you're living your life and, how lucky you are.
You got your coffee order wrong.
Yeah, you're fine.
It's
gonna be fine, man. Just
right.
Take a freaking pill. You're fine.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. So to wrap it up, where can they find you on socials? Where is VRB Labs?
Yeah, man.
Any deals, any other news coming up?
Dude, 100%. We're at verblabs.com, www.victorromeobravo.labs, as in laboratories.com. Instagram is at VRB_labs. And
can you not did you put the underscore? Does someone have VRB Labs?
I don't actually know. I think Evan was the one who actually did that. So
okay.
I don't know. We do have verblabs.com, which we were pretty psyched about. But code Wes, let's call it Wes 20. I haven't actually set that up yet, so I'm going to do that like right.
Oh, for me.
Yeah.
Oh, WES 20. Okay.
WES 20 for 20% off your first order.
Oh, hell yeah.
At VRB Labs. So
I got Christmas gifts to buy.
Let's go, man. Yeah, me too. So yeah, and honestly, like as I said before, if any listeners, have any questions about who we are, what we're doing, I mean, if you want to, if you have questions about the Naval Academy, about naval aviation, about Wharton, these are all things that I'm like extremely passionate about, and along with like what I'm doing now with VRB, the passion.
Your Instagram, did you say that?
Oh yeah, my Instagram is chase.hobby, CHASE.HOBBY.
Yeah.
Drop a line, drop me a DM.
I'll put them all in the description too.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, man, I'm pumped to be here. I'm pumped that you love the products and you thought to invite me down here. So
yeah, the number one of the new format. Yeah, I'd like to have Evan on or both of you guys on back at the same time. And, because it was a good conversation. I feel like we could explore a lot more things. And I met Evan one time at your event at Squatch Fitness here, and I think it'd be pretty cool to get his side of things as well.
We'll get him down here, man. Let's make it happen.
All right, man.
All right, bro.
See ya.